Humanity's fascination with space and the idea of traveling beyond our world isn't a modern-day wonder. In fact, the concept of space travel has been around for centuries, long before we ever looked through a telescope or dreamed of rockets. One of the earliest references to space travel comes from an ancient writer named Lucian, who lived nearly 2,000 years ago. In his book A True Story, Lucian describes a fantastical journey to the moon. While the story is a mix of satire and fantasy, it reveals how early thinkers were already imagining what might exist beyond Earth. In Lucian's tale, characters voyage through space, encountering beings from the moon and the sun, and even debating the colonization of Venus. Kepler, ever the curious and imaginative mind, responded with a small book titled Conversation with the Sidereal Messenger. In this book, Kepler's thoughts leap from one idea to the next, musing about everything from the habitability of Jupiter's moons to whether astrology was still valid in the wake of Galileo's discoveries. But it's one particular passage that stands out, and it's a quote that would resonate with the space age we now find ourselves in. But as soon as somebody demonstrates the art of flying, settlers from our species of man will not be lacking. Who would once have thought that the crossing of the wide ocean was calmer and safer than of the narrow Adriatic Sea, Baltic Sea, or English Channel? Given ships or sails adapted to the breezes of heaven, there will be those who will not shrink from even that vast expanse. Therefore, for the sake of those who, as it were, will presently be on hand to attempt this voyage, let us establish the astronomy, Galileo, you of Jupiter, and me of the moon. Kepler's vision, written more than 400 years ago, was extraordinary. He imagined a future where humanity would take flight into the heavens, exploring not just the Earth, but the moon, and even the far reaches of the solar system. Today, we have put humans on the moon and sent uncrewed spacecraft to Jupiter and beyond. We have accomplished what Kepler could only dream of, thanks in no small part to the work of Kepler himself, Galileo, and many others. Kepler's words were a call to action for future explorers. His belief that once humans could fly, we would naturally venture into space is something we are now living. And though the journey to the stars is far from over, the mapmakers Kepler and Galileo dreamed of have paved the way for our own voyages into the unknown. So, next time you look up at the stars, remember, humanity's quest to explore the cosmos didn't begin with rockets or satellites. It began with the dreams of thinkers like Lucian, Kepler, and Galileo, who imagined a world beyond Earth long before we had the technology to reach it. Space exploration, in many ways, has always been a journey of imagination, and as Kepler so beautifully put it, those who will presently be on hand to attempt this voyage will continue to dream, explore, and discover, just as we do today. Rockets, the amazing machines that allow us to travel to space today, but have a history that stretches back thousands of years. The rocket story is one of innovation, trial and error, and leaps of imagination. And believe it or not, the roots of modern rockets are buried deep in ancient history. Let's take a journey through time and explore how the humble rocket evolved into the incredible technology we rely on today. Our story starts in 400 BC with a Greek philosopher and mathematician named Archytas. Archytas didn't have rockets as we know them, but he did something pretty remarkable. He created a wooden pigeon that flew through the air, propelled by escaping steam. Now, this wasn't a rocket in the modern sense, but it was one of the first devices to use the basic principles of rocket flight, action and reaction. Fast forward about 300 years, and we meet Hero of Alexandria, another Greek inventor. He created something called an Aeolipile, a steam-powered device. Hero's invention used steam to spin a sphere, rotating it with the force of escaping gas. Think of it as one of the first steam engines, and again, an early experiment in propulsion. Now, the real turning point for rockets comes from China. The first true rockets weren't deliberate inventions, they were accidents. In the 1st century AD, the Chinese created gunpowder by mixing saltpeter, sulfur, and charcoal. They used this mixture to make fireworks for religious festivals, but some tubes didn't explode as expected. Instead, they shot off into the air, propelled by the gases released from the burning gunpowder. In 1232, during the Battle of Kai-Keng, the Chinese used these fire arrows against the Mongols in one of the first recorded uses of rockets in warfare. The psychological impact of these fiery, smoke-filled projectiles was probably just as significant as their destructive power. By the 13th to 15th centuries, Europe was buzzing with rocket experimentation. A monk from England, Roger Bacon, worked on improving gunpowder to increase the range of rockets. Meanwhile, in France, Jean Froissart launched rockets through tubes, an idea that would lay the groundwork for the bazooka we know today. These ancient beginnings might seem far removed from the rockets that send astronauts into space today, but without the groundbreaking work of these early pioneers, our journey to the stars would have never been possible. By the 16th century, rockets had largely fallen out of favor as weapons of war, but they still lit up the night sky in the form of fireworks. One German fireworks maker, Johann Schmidlapp, made a revolutionary breakthrough, the step rocket. Schmidlapp's step rocket was a multi-stage device designed to carry fireworks to greater altitudes. Once the first stage burned out, the second stage ignited and climbed even higher. This idea of stage propulsion forms the basis of every modern rocket used to explore outer space. While Schmidlapp was advancing rocketry for fireworks, a legendary figure in China dreamed of using rockets for transportation. Enter Wan-Hu, a lesser-known official who supposedly built a rocket-powered flying chair. According to the legend, Wan-Hu attached 2 large kites to his chair, along with 47 fire arrow rockets. On the day of his historic attempt, his assistants lit the rockets, and the chair disappeared in a billowing cloud of smoke. Whether the story is true or not, it highlights humanity's early fascination with using rockets to conquer the skies. Real progress in rocketry required a better understanding of motion and physics. Enter Sir Isaac Newton. In the late 17th century, Newton's 3 laws of motion laid the foundation for modern rocket science, explaining how rockets work and why they can function even in the vacuum of space. Newton's work inspired rocket experimenters across Europe. By the early 18th century, people were building steam-powered model rockets and testing larger designs capable of generating enough thrust to bore holes in the ground before even lifting off. By the late 18th century, rockets made a fiery return to the battlefield. Indian forces used rocket barrages against British troops in 1792 and 1799, sparking renewed interest in rocket weaponry. One British artillery expert, Colonel William Congreve, took these ideas and transformed them into a weapon for the British military.